All right, so we're going to talk about day 3 homework. So answer the questions on Ed Puzzle. All right, let's talk about number 1. So when we're talking about growth or decay, we want to read the graph from left to right. So from left all the way to right, am I going up or down? And so since I'm going up, then it is growth, and that's because the graph increases from left to right. So now let's take a look at the left end behavior. The left side of the graph is approaching -2. The right side of the graph is approaching positive infinity. The horizontal asymptote is y equals -2, which is why the left behavior is approaching that. So notice that the graph is above the horizontal asymptote. So A is greater than 0 because graph is above the horizontal asymptote. So here's where you need to pay attention to the formula, but the form that they want. They're saying that it is already going to be in the form here, a y-axis reflection. Okay. So according to this graph, it is already a y-axis reflection. And if A is positive, then that means there's only one reflection. So since there's only one reflection and it's growth, then that is going to indicate that B has to be in between 0 and 1. And that is because graph has one y-axis reflection. C is equal to -2 because y equals -2 is the horizontal asymptote. Okay, let's take a look at this one. We can see that it is, will you answer that question? All right, we're going to go with decay because the graph is decreasing from left to right. So as x approaches -infinity, f of x approaches positive infinity. As x approaches positive infinity, f of x is approaching the number 1, which would indicate the horizontal asymptote of 1. Since it's above, a is greater than 0 because, again, the graph is above the horizontal asymptote. So again, we have one reflection, and this is not a reflection. So in order for it to be decay with one reflection, B would have to be greater than 0 because graph is decay with y-axis reflection. And then C is equal to 1 because y equals 1 is the horizontal asymptote. Okay, here we go. Let's take a look at this. Let's look at the equation. Notice that this is no reflection, but this is. So A is less than 0, so there is an x-axis reflection. So there's one reflection. B is 0.98, which is a number between 0 and 1. All right, so is it growth or decay? Well, normally 0.98 is going to be, this by itself would normally indicate decay, but we have one reflection, so it's growth. Okay, and again, that's because 0 is less than B is less than 1, and there is one reflection. All right, so y equals 3 is the horizontal asymptote. It's right here. The graph is, and we know that it's going to be below because A is less than 0. Graph is going to be below because of this reflection right here. All right, let's see if you can try 5, 6, and 7. All right, so on 5, A is greater than 0. And also that is also positive, so there is no reflection. B is 2/5, which means 0 is less than B is less than 1. So that's your typical ordinary decay function. Okay, it's decay because the B value is between 0 and 1 and no reflections. Y is equal to -2. The graph is above the horizontal asymptote because A is positive. All right. So notice here that there are two reflections. A is less than 0 and X is less than 0. So an x-axis and y-axis reflection. B is 2, so B is greater than 1. Remember, there's two reflections. So what would that normally be? 2 would normally be a growth. With two reflections, it's still a growth because B is greater than 1 and two reflections. Y is equal to 0. It's kind of like that constant. You could put a plus 0. So the graph is below the horizontal asymptote because A is less than 0. All right, so here we go. We have A and the X. So we have A is less than 0 and X is less than 0. So we have the X-axis and the Y-axis reflections. B is 0.0003, which means B is in between 0 and 1. So normally that would be a decay with two reflections. You still end up with decay. Right? B is in between 0 and 1, and there are two reflections. Y is equal to 5, and the graph is below because A is less than 0. All right, so be specific in your questions so I can address them in class. All right, so shown below is a table of values for an exponential function in the form of a times b to the x plus c. Pay attention, there are no reflections in this form. All right. Provide the indicated information for each function. Provide an explanation for your conclusions about A, B, and C. So if it's growth or decay, we start and looking at the left to the right. We were going from -510 to about 2. So that means it's going to be a growth because as x increases, the y values increase. Okay, so that kind of ties directly into the left end behavior and the right end behavior. So the left end behavior is approaching negative infinity, and then the right end behavior looks like it's approaching 2. That means the horizontal asymptote is 2. All right, so that means we got to take a look and see, are all of these y values, okay, we're trying to determine what the value of A is. Is it positive or negative? So if I were to take a look at these, are all these previous y values smaller than 2 or bigger than 2? And it looks like all of these are smaller than 2. So that means that that graph is below that horizontal asymptote, which implies that A is less than 0. Okay, and that's just because all the y values of g of x are less than 2, which is the horizontal asymptote, right? All right, so it's under that. All right, let's take a look at the b value. All right, so in order for us to have no reflection here, we have one reflection here. In order for this to be a growth, then that is going to have to tell us that there's one reflection, which would indicate 0 is less than b is less than 1. Because normally this would be a decay, but because there's one reflection, it makes it a growth. All right, so, and that is because g of x is growth with one reflection. All right, C is equal to 2 because y equals 2 is the horizontal asymptote. All right, let's try 9. Notice that the form of the equation implies that there is a y-axis reflection. So according to this form, we already have a y-axis reflection. So let's take a look. All right, let's analyze the y values. We're starting at negative 125 and we're going really close to 3. All right, so that means we are increasing, okay? As x increases, the y values also increase, okay? Left in behavior is approaching negative infinity from the table, right? Negative 125. And then the right end behavior looks like it is approaching 3. Okay. That means the equation of the horizontal asymptote is y equals 3. The a value, let's take a look. Are all of these other y values bigger than 3 or smaller than 3? And if they're smaller than 3, then that means a is going to be less than 0. And we just said that because all values, all y values, right, of h of x are less than 3, which is the horizontal asymptote. All right, so now let's take a look. We've got one reflection and then another reflection. So what that means, like if we originally started off with decay, we end with decay. If we ended up starting off with growth, we end with growth. So what is a normal growth B value with no reflections? It would indicate B is greater than 1. And that's because h of x is growth with 2 reflections. All right, C is equal to 3 because y equals 3 is the horizontal asymptote.